Welcome to the OurCalling podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking to Dr. David Woody III, is the CEO and president of the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center, learning more about what they do and what integral role they play in serving our homeless neighbors.
Who is OurCalling? What does OurCalling do to help the homeless?
The nonprofit.
We care with dignity.
OurCalling.
Can't help but think about the definition of Christian.
We connect with intentionality.
Called OurCalling.
It's to OurCalling.
We build community with integrity.
This is OurCalling and our podcast, a word on the streets about homelessness. All right, today I'm here with Dr. David Woody, CEO and president of the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center in downtown Dallas. Little weird for me because I remember serving meals in that field before the bridge was built. Both of us have been doing this a minute in different places.
That's right.
But again, I want to take a moment for you just to kind of introduce yourself. What do you do?
Okay.
What's your role?
Great. Again, thanks for having me, Wayne. It's good to see you again. I'm thinking back to the pandemic and the intense meetings regularly, more than regularly. So it's good to be back on the campus and to see how things are growing and it's bustling today. Again, Dr. David Woody III, President and CEO of the Bridge. I have been at the Bridge. It will be 9 years in June. And in my current role, I just celebrated 6 years as president and CEO of the Bridge. When I first came to the Bridge, I was chief services officer. And I think that's how we initially engaged each other, just around collaborating, frankly, on the services to the unsheltered here in Dallas. As you mentioned, the Bridge now will be 16 years old next month. And it is in a homeless encampment, frankly. That's what was there. And again, we are a low barrier shelter here in Dallas. Our arms are wide open in terms of accepting single adults, 18 and older. And we are about engaging, trying to get folks, to build just enough trust with folks to get them onto the campus and to contemplate, frankly, what's the exit strategy from homelessness.
Sure.
And again, we're offering both day shelter services, great partnerships, collaborations with Parkland Hospital, with MetroCare, as most of our shelter partners have got those folks immersed on the campus. 3 meals a day, 3 hot meals a day, showering, indoor and outdoor showers. We have a kennel. We'll hold about 20 to 25 canines.
So if someone comes with their dog, they can still come into a shelter.
Exactly.
Now,
that's right.
All the other shelters in town, this is it.
That's
you guys
right.
are the only one that'll take someone and their 4-legged friend.
Exactly. And so, as you can imagine, we have a waiting list of canines to get in, as well as our unsheltered folks. And so to offer those services during the day is important. But also we have night shelter for right around $375, maybe $400 with our overflow at night. And right now, my biggest concern is this, Wayne, is that a couple days last week, we saw nearly 700 folks on the campus for day shelter services. And we know about the lack of night shelter on the campus. And so we can offer day shelter around 700. Maybe 400 or so at night, but we've got that delta of folks who are unsheltered.
Sure.
And right now, I think that's what the community here, Cedars, Farmers Market, they're concerned about folks who are unsheltered on the street and what's happening, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, it feels to me like since the bridge was built, and I remember the ribbon cutting ceremony, I was there and it was so much fun. Was it Mayor Rawlings at the time?
That's right.
Yeah, he used to be the homeless czar.
Czar, right.
But when it was built, it was just such an amazing opportunity to build something downtown. There wasn't a shelter in downtown Dallas,
That's
right? Years ago, there was. Austin Street Center used to be on Austin Street.
That's right.
And then they built the convention center there, so it moved. And Dallas Life is across the highway, but it's still more families. It's not a lot more barriers to get into.
Right.
But to provide a shelter in downtown was going to create this beautiful space. And I remember when they first opened, people could sleep anywhere.
That's right.
There were people sleeping on every piece of sidewalk, every piece of concrete, in the pavilion, outside the pavilion.
That's right.
bodies everywhere, people
Right.
sleeping because there were needs.
You're right.
But since then, 16 years ago, it doesn't feel like Dallas has added any significant shelter space.
That's
Now,
right.
our friends at Austin Street, Daniel,
they've
they opened
expanded.
up their new facility.
Right.
But even then, city hasn't allowed them to add a bunch of extra beds
That's right.
because of zoning,
That's right.
because of
Correct.
restrictions.
That's right.
It just seems like Dallas's homeless population, and they just reported that we have 8 million people in the Metroplex,
Yes.
but we haven't added. It's like a small town that doesn't make the streets any bigger,
That's right.
and realize
That's right.
infrastructure doesn't
That's
keep
right.
up.
Yes.
And so I'm hearing you say that you think we need more shelter beds.
There's no question about it, right? And again, we can talk all we want to about the fact that what will eliminate homelessness is housing. Okay, we know about money that's been set aside, meager at best, but it's been set aside, but not accessed, not put into action. And there's still lots of talking about more workforce, more affordable housing. Okay, right now though, we need more shelter, or else folks are going to see people on the street.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. Okay?
Yeah, one day, when we moved into this building, we asked the question, should we serve lunch? Because you guys already serve lunch.
That's right.
We don't need,
Yeah.
gonna have competition here.
Mhm, right.
Well, one of the things we realized earlier on is we did need to, because there were too many people.
That's right.
But we specifically set our lunch time to be the same time as the Bridge
Right.
and the same time as Cornerstone, which
Mhm,
serves
right.
lunch.
Yes.
With Pastor Chris, who's on our board, good
Yes.
friends.
Mhm.
We said, okay, let's not make a place where people can hop from place to place to place.
That's right.
Let's look at how
the
many
same
people we're
time.
serving. And if you add the number of people that we're serving for lunch,
Right.
you're serving for lunch, they're serving for lunch,
Right.
Dallas needs a lot more beds.
Correct.
And
Correct.
then you
There's
take
no
street
question.
outreach teams going all over the city.
Right.
How do you, I know I'm jumping the gun here, we have a list of questions, but how in your mind, do you measure the value, and I know we have to do it, the
Yeah.
point in time count versus the numbers that we actually see in
Right.
reality?
Exactly. It obviously, the point in time count, if we're just looking at 2023, I think it was 4410, something was the number. Okay. And folks wanted to celebrate that as a reduction, 4%. Okay. The reality, though, is at the Bridge, we've only seen more people. Okay. I brought some numbers last year overall, and that this is post pandemic. We saw overall 6,300, maybe 6,400 folks. Right now, already, as of last week, I just got these numbers. We have already seen over 46, nearly 5,000 unique individuals, and we're only 5 months into the fiscal year. Okay. So we can talk all we want about it being reduced. Okay. The Bridge, though, in terms of the needs of the unsheltered, we're exploding.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And so that's that number, point in time count number, is a great starting place. What? Another 4,000 folks uncounted? I think that's more realistic for city of Dallas.
Yeah. And if you keep going further out,
Yes.
Dallas is big,
Mhm,
right?
yes.
Not even the county, but just sticking in Dallas itself, we're
Yes.
seeing huge growth of homeless camps all along
All
the
over.
outskirts and
That's right.
all up and down the Trinity, all up
Correct.
in South Dallas,
Yes.
all along 635.
Right?
When we look at those maps, it just glows.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
With all
right.
the people
That's
there.
Right. It's
Okay.
those are hot maps. It's
Yeah.
hot. Yes.
Okay, so you talked about the Bridge,
Mhm.
some of the current stats, current numbers.
Right.
If you could, real quick, tell me the history.
Okay.
History of the Bridge.
Okay. Originally, as you described, 15 minutes ago, again, folks came in and basically it was going to be a repository for folks who are homeless, and we were sleeping folks all over. I think a major change has been the notion of recovery. Okay. And crafting with a guest, again, we talk folks, guest on the campus. What's the exit strategy? A care and housing plan. Okay. We can go do an initial intake, identify what some of the issues were that created this homeless status, and then with that care management relationship, prioritize what kinds of things need to be addressed. Physical health needs through Parkland on campus, behavioral health, mental health, substance use needs through MetroCare, and then basically piece together enough stability such that a person can take on some additional skills that will allow them to sustain a housing solution in the community. So that's been a major, I think, transition. And it's also spoken to maybe, I think our arms are wide open, but this expectation that we're going to be asking a guest, where'd you sleep last night? Do you have a care manager? What's your next step? And that the bridge is just a stop along the way to get you prepared to manage that. And for us now to be able to talk, we're tracking at 6 months, where is somebody who we've housed? And 93% of folks at 6 months are still in their housing solution. And so I think that's great in terms of success, quote unquote, for the bridge. But I, as a leader, also have to be very concerned about the growing numbers. And is there a better way for us to keep our arms wide open, but also be balanced in terms of an expectation that folks would come in and be about a recovery experience?
So I'm going to ask you a question that can sometimes sound a little bit alarming, or it causes people to kind of want to make fists and fight. Whenever I hear an organization say we're the best, they're the biggest, we do more, we love people more, we've got the biggest shelter, we got whatever it is,
Right.
I just want to slap them. I'm like, it's not true. It's arrogant. It's not helpful.
Right.
But what do you feel that the bridge does best for the guests on your campus? Now, you're not comparing yourself to anybody else, any other organization, but everybody has their niche, right? And I know you guys are single adults only, and including those with pets, and you have all these litany of services, from haircuts to getting your dogs wormed and taken care of, and meal services, partnership with the Stew Pot.
Sure.
But what do you feel like the bridge does best that you're so proud of?
What I'm most proud of is just the care management experience, okay? And we have 3 teams. A recovery care management team manages an overwhelming percentage of our guests who have had that one budget busting event that tripped them over into homelessness, especially post-pandemic, loss of a job, an eviction, that kind of thing. And that they would come in, see our recovery care management team, and quickly, hopefully, identify a new housing solution that they can afford, and hopefully employment or benefits that will support that. Then we have a intensive care management team that deals strictly with our guests who have behavioral health, mental health, and or substance use issue, smaller caseloads so that they can really wrap their arms around that person and hopefully connect them with a permanent supportive housing experience. And then we've got a housing care management team where we're doing 6 months of housing follow-up with folks post-placement, really helping them to really get rooted in the community. Where do I shop? Where do I get my meds? If I have a spiritual need, how I can get connected to a church, all of those kind of basic things that anybody in society, once you move, in order to be stable and rooted in your new experience, most of us, we have the skills or a partner who can help us with that. The homeless folks who are leaving our shelter experience where they're guided, engaged, they're by themselves. And that sounds great. They've got their own key, but after 48 hours, they're lonely, they're alone. And so to have somebody who will come out and check on them for at least 6 months to make sure they're stable, that's what allows us to have that 93% post-placement experience and not coming back to the bridge.
That's important, because the goal is not to get people off the streets. The goal is to keep them off the streets.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned a lot of things in that need that your care team is doing once they get off the street.
Right.
Connection with food resources, maybe employment for those that are employable.
That's right.
Counseling, mental health care.
That's right.
And as you're saying this list, it just reminds me that although housing is a necessity for people to end their homelessness, it is not the only need that anyone has.
That's right. Everybody
Everybody that's ever been to our place or yours has been in a house before.
Right. Yes.
And housing is a necessity. It's a required ingredient, right?
That's right.
But housing alone is never going to resolve.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right. I
someone's
mean,
long-term needs.
there's, who is it? Luther Vandross, a house is not a home. Oh, that's a perfect example right there. And of how we're trying to soften the walls, the floors. What do we need to add to that structure that will allow a person to feel fully engaged and be able to make a home what it needs to be for them, right?
What do you believe? So housing first has been adopted since
Yes.
a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You made a reaction there, right? Right?
Yes.
Where do you feel like we could do things better? I'm not saying housing first is wrong or
Mhm.
bad. You know, I've got opinions on that. I know you
Yes,
do too.
Exactly.
But where do you feel there's a shortfall or a pain point there that as a community we can do better?
Again, the bridge was established as a result of a bond package, 2007, 2006. Okay. And an element of that package
Wait a
wasn't-
minute. Pause real quick.
Okay.
The bridge was created based on a bond package in 2006 or 7.
That's right.
The bridge didn't open until 2008.
Yes.
That bond package was probably put in works and planned on 4 or 5 years
Mhm.
before then.
Mayor Rawlings, former Mayor Rawlings, the homeless czar.
Okay.
That's what he was involved in, the
Okay.
creation of that, and championed the need, right, for an experience, a housing, homeless
Now, was
assistance
he
center.
the czar under Laura Miller when she
That's
was mayor?
right.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Okay. And so, what is it? $23.7 million to establish in its footprint the bridge. Okay. But then also another element of that bond was housing. Okay. Establishing housing. And we're still trying to do that. Okay. As a community, we're way behind in terms of workforce affordable housing. Most folks, Dallas Morning News claims that homelessness is a major concern for everybody. And so, again, at the bridge, I've got 110 individuals, okay, who we describe as housing ready, okay? They're well down the road in terms of their recovery experience, connected to Parkland, connected to MetroCare, our care manager. They've got their benefits in place, a voucher perhaps, okay? And we can't connect them to a housing solution, okay? And so
Now, why can't you connect them?
there's just not enough options that we can connect. For example, a voucher to, okay? Folks get a voucher. They got 90 days to put it into play. We're asking for extensions, okay? And so what we've done is I've got part of my housing team now going out and trying to craft relationships with landlords who are willing to give folks a second chance, but without all of the drama of a voucher and that kind of thing. So we've got more resources to bring to bear through the bridge to work with a landlord who would say, hey, I've been that way, or I've got a family member who's been through this. I've got 3 units, okay, that I would like to work with the bridge on. How would you all support a person when they come, et cetera, et cetera? And again, if we had more available, affordable housing with landlords who would accept the benefits that a guest has, I think that we could turn it in. I just can't create a flow at the bridge, okay? We've got outreach, folks contemplating recovery services, housing ready, and I've got a backlog in my housing ready group because I can't get them out into a unit.
And when you say we can't get them out, it's not because your team doesn't know how to do the job. It's that you have some rules that you're held to.
Right?
It has to be a house that meets a certain standard.
Yes.
You have to have a landlord that's willing to take them.
Right.
It's in a safe space for
Yes.
them.
Mhm.
And just finding that available inventory
Yes.
has been really tough.
That's the tough part.
What about services that are offered or not offered? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there a lack? Is there a need? Is there too many services to people once they get into housing?
It's been really challenging, in terms of what our housing team has experienced in respect to a housing follow-up experience, okay? It's one thing to have crafted that relationship with a guest who can trust in you and your ability to connect them to resources in their new neighborhood, okay? The fact that there is not enough resources, and again, it's a complex thing in terms of the types of resources that are needed, but connecting that guest to resources in their community, that's been a challenge. We've struggled with, okay, once we get a person into a new home in a different community, should we have them come back to take advantage of the needs that they have because those resources are not available in their new community, okay? And so we're expending a lot of energy, a lot of political energy, frankly, trying to connect and empower services through local organizations, through neighborhood churches and those kinds of things, who want to be able to offer more to a guest in that new community who is just coming out of an unsheltered or homeless experience.
Yeah, when they wake up in the morning, they go in the cafeteria and eat meals.
Exactly.
They have a lunch, they have a great dinner. But when they get an apartment, they look in that kitchen and they're like, okay, something's missing
That's
here.
right. That's right.
There might be
Who's
a
gonna
food
make money?
pantry down the
Mhm.
road, but it
Right.
might take them an hour and a half on a bus. They
Mhm.
got to carry this box of food
E-
back.
Exactly.
Then they got to get in the food prep role, which
Mhm.
we can all figure out how to do. But when you've got to do this 3 times a day, 7 days a week, like you and I do,
Right.
right?
Yes.
But still, on top of all the other challenges, like getting your meds
Mm-hmm.
filled,
Yes.
remembering to take your meds,
That's
going
right.
and seeing that counselor, going and let that doctor look at that problem with your knee,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
whatever,
Yeah.
all those life skills,
Mhm.
continued addiction recovery classes, like 12-step
Right,
classes. You mentioned
exactly.
spiritual, maybe connecting with a church.
Right.
This person now has a job,
Yes,
and
they
their
do.
new job is this agenda on how to care for themselves almost by themselves.
That's right. That's right.
Because I
Yes.
feel like they put too much pressure on case managers when
Mhm.
they get in housing. They expect them to be miracle workers.
Exactly. Everything is going to be perfect, and that's part, we hadn't talked much about the experiences. We talk a lot, and a lot of folks focus on the needs of the guests. It's another whole thing, especially post pandemic, to be thinking about our employees, okay? And the burdens, frankly, that they carry, both in terms of the variety of and uniqueness of each guest, but also what that guest brings to bear in terms of trauma, et cetera, and how they manage that, okay? Along with wanting to see their guests succeed.
Oh, yeah. And the
Okay.
frustration when they don't.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
When you see them come back. Right. Yes.
So I'm gonna tell you what we do, and I'd love
Okay.
to hear what you guys do,
Okay.
because this is a learning experience,
yes.
right? So we have 2 chaplains that all they work with is our staff.
Mhm.
They're staff chaplains. They're
Yes.
counselor trained
Yes.
staff chaplains, so
Right.
they have skills,
Yes.
right? We also do trauma processing groups for our
Okay.
staff.
Okay.
All kinds of trauma training,
Right.
not just trauma informed care of how
Right.
to work with someone who's lived through trauma,
Mhm.
but how to express and understand the complex secondary trauma that you're exposed
That's
to,
right. Yes.
compassion fatigue,
Yes.
all those challenges, because you're working with someone and you've gone through all these steps and then they disappear.
Right.
You're working with someone, you go through all the steps and they die
Mhm.
on the street.
Yes.
And you feel, man, if I could have only made that one phone call, if that door would have opened,
Right.
if that
Yes.
landlord would have taken that, if that one program would have accepted them with their criminal background,
Right.
and now you feel the culpability in there, right? We
That's
work
correct.
with people that have committed suicide.
Mhm.
We work
Yes.
with people that have been murdered and people that have committed murder
Yes.
because of, all the
Arms wide
chaos
open. Yes.
in the streets.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's so much burden and pressure put on workers in this space.
Yes.
Now I'm going to go a little pastor on us here. When Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened,
Right.
I will give you rest."
Right.
We think of our neighbors as the ones carrying the burdens, and they do.
Yes.
But
What?
in an unhealthy way, sometimes our staff try to carry those burdens in a codependent way. I can
Yes.
fix them. I'm responsible for them. And so we're continually trying to figure out, how do we care for our staff? We have a
Right.
counseling room for them here.
Okay.
We pay for counseling. We have a team of counselors around the county that we found that actually specialize in trauma
Wow.
care
Okay.
like
Yes.
this.
Okay.
So that's what we've done for
Mhm.
our staff,
Right.
trying to make sure they're healthy,
Right.
healthy at home.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
whether they wear a green shirt or not, if they leave our calling, that's fine. We want to make sure they're healthy.
Right.
They're healthy at home, recognizing they get exposed to a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We have a relationship with Marketplace Chaplains. Okay. Same kind of experience that you do on the campus, several days a month. Folks can be involved in both individual experiences, group experiences as well. Some of our teams, obviously, going through things. And it's great to hear you describe some of what, and we'll have to, once this is over, talk more, because we're not doing as much as you, frankly, in terms of care. You have put together in terms of trauma, secondary trauma. We're aware of it. We did a couple studies with our care management team about what their needs are. I guess I should say this, we have not done enough to prioritize care for our employees. So we need to do more talking about that. You spoke about the issues of loss of clients, the guests, that kind of thing. Earlier this week, we had a guest who had been in our emergency shelter and didn't wake up, okay, and passed away in his sleep. And it's a ribbon effect, both-
collateral damage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For both the guests, but also for employees who crafted a relationship with this person over X number of months, he was making progress in terms of his care and housing plan. And it's like, yes, he died in his sleep. He was in good spot in terms of his physical health, at least through Parkland. But it's like, what else could we have done? Okay. And the burden of that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. That's so hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're ever going to figure it out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The burdens that our guests, our neighbors carry,
Mhm.
when we try to walk with them and carry that burden with them, I
Right.
think of the Good Samaritan. When he put the guy
Exactly.
on his own donkey,
Mm-hmm.
he's paying for the guy's needs. He's
Mhm.
caring for his needs. Maybe he's treating his wounds.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And in the story, the guy that's wounded is Jewish. He's a
Mhm.
Jew.
Yes.
And the Samaritan, and so maybe even the guy on the donkey is saying, "Leave me alone! Don't touch
Don't-
me! I don't want anything to
exactly.
do with you."
That's right.
He's like
Yes.
fighting the guy he's trying to
That's
care
right.
for.
That's
which
right.
we
We've seen
see.
that.
Yeah, crazy.
For
Okay,
sure.
so the bridge does amazing work. You're doing amazing work there, but you also do a lot of work outside of the bridge.
Yes.
So your
Okay.
business card, if it had all of your boards you serve on and committees, would be like
Committees,
3
yes.
pages long. So
Exactly.
if you could share some of the other roles you have
Okay.
in the community.
Okay. I am the past chair of the Executive Leadership Council for our local Continuum of Care, the All Neighbors Coalition. And that has been critical over the last 24 months or so in terms of trying to transform our homeless response system. One of the things that I would say is that, and some of this was born through the pandemic, the need for providers within the homeless response system to really come together to address the needs of homeless citizens during the pandemic. They had no advocates in terms of shelter, in terms of access to a vaccine, all of those kinds of things. And I think out of that experience, I know I'm working more closely with other homeless service providers who are doing amazing work. I'm also, as part of our All Neighbors Coalition, working with 3 or 4 different work groups who are kind of real down in the weeds in terms of the various complexities of homelessness. Everything from our HMIS system, which has gone through how many changes over the last 10 years, and we're still not where we need to be. Racial equity, and that unsheltered citizen or a person who is in a good spot in terms of recovery, that they have as many options for a housing solution as anybody else in our community. I'm also, let me think, I'm blocking on, and I've got 2 other committees that I'm involved with to try to keep my finger on the pulse of the change process, because at the bridge, because we're dealing with folks 18 and older who are coming from so many backgrounds, are we doing as much as we need to do at the bridge to really tap into the resources, because we can't do it by ourselves. And so that's why I get so much pleasure in terms of just being involved with so many people, such that I can bring to bear what I know, what we're doing at the bridge, but also to get so much more in terms of how we can change and get better.
Sure. Wow. The coalition and Housing Forward has made some amazing strides over the last couple of years.
Yes.
I feel like they've reinvented themselves a few times, but
Mhm.
this current iteration is so solid,
Yes.
and they're doing
Yeah.
such amazing work in the community.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many people on their staff, so many of their board members,
Right.
and it's just amazing to see that. We've been a part of the coalition for many years.
Yes.
Um, where do you see areas where we need community-wide? What are the pain points where we still need community-wide support,
Okay.
and areas where we can do more?
I think one area is just, and I know you've had a lot of input and have done some cutting edge things around the management of data. Okay. We, I think, have a much more viable homeless management information system. We've got so many more organizations committing their data to it. What I would like to see us be doing is, there's so much a dependence on the point in time count when we have all this additional data. Okay, we need to be doing, what are the next steps in terms of really analysis, understanding that data, such that we can be more accurate. Okay, it's great to do the point in time count. We know it's not accurate. And I think our HMIS system can get closer to that accuracy need that organizations need to tell their story, so that we can bring to bear resources both from the city, the state, and federal government in terms of the real needs here. A second issue for me is how we talk about issues of equity. Okay. Most of the guests that we see at the bridge are from some community in Dallas. Okay. Nearly 65% of who we see on the bridge campus is African American. Okay. And so I think that speaks to access issues, barriers to basic resources in those communities. And so I'm really concerned about what's happening upstream. Okay. Because, I can be a great leader and have great metrics and goals that we want to achieve in terms of numbers and that kind of thing. But we don't have a good sense of what's happening upstream so I can better prepare for what's happening. Okay. The fact that we had planned to see maybe 7,000 unique guests this year, we were totally off. Totally off. We're almost there, and we're only 6 months into the fiscal year. So the reverberations of that are incredible in terms of my employees' readiness, in terms of our budget, and how much we're spending right now. We didn't expect to be spending as much right now. We've still got 6 months to go. And so lastly, a big issue is how can we tell a story such that we can get our foundations, our corporations more involved, not through just volunteer activities, but committing resources to the strategic needs that we have in the community.
Those are good answers. One of the issues you talked about is what percentage of the guests at the bridge are African American?
Yeah.
65%.
Mm-hmm.
But Dallas is not 65%
No, it's
African
not.
American,
That's right.
right? It's
Yes.
to see that disparity and what can be done historically, what's been done,
Right.
even though just over the last couple of decades
Yes.
in Dallas with all the
Yes.
housing policies and the
Mhm.
lack
Yes.
of development in South Dallas.
Right.
So we are just south of I-30 here.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when we moved here, it was amazing that we couldn't get a pizza delivered here.
That's right. Yes.
We couldn't get the Dallas Morning News delivered here.
Mhm.
And we were one of the Dallas Morning News charities. And their office is just right over there, right
here,
across
yes.
the bridge.
That's right. Yeah.
And there was no internet in this area.
Right.
So many things were different
Yes.
here. And obviously when we moved into this building, we were in a corner of near downtown that
Right.
hadn't been really developed and still hasn't been.
Right.
But still, it's the disparity.
That's right.
Even
Yes.
just the basics, like a good grocery store.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Having
Well, how far
access
do you have to travel
in
for a
South
grocery store
Dallas.
here? Yeah.
And people don't realize how important that is. These are the reasons why people become homeless.
Exactly. It's a
Right?
huge contributor. Yes.
And it's
Okay.
this pipeline that just keeps feeding.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we've realized, and I talk to cities all the time, and every city always says this: why don't everybody send all their homeless people to us? You know?
Yes. Mhm. Yes.
And yet reality is
No.
80 to 90% are homegrown.
That's right.
Those are your people.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Yes.
I don't care
Embrace
what city
that.
you're in, 80,
Yes.
90% are homegrown, 10 to 15% maybe,
Transient
are
folk.
transient.
Yeah.
Because look at your population. More than
Mhm.
10 to 15% of your population is probably transient anyway.
That's right.
But most of them are homegrown folks
Mm-hmm.
that have fallen out
It's for some
and they're
reason.
experiencing homelessness and they're in desperate need.
Correct. That's right. Yeah. So you've hit it on the head in terms of, and that's a major challenge, which is to educate the public. And I'm really glad to be able to participate in this because that's become a more significant part of my role that I've been embracing is what can I bring to bear, both in terms of data, but also empathy, compassion. How can I balance that to really tell a story to folks who want to understand it? They want to understand what's going on, but more importantly, how can they have an impact on the solution?
Yeah.
Right. And for folks to be able to come to the bridge or to come to some other shelter, to talk with folks about feeding, street feeding, for example. Right. And the impact of that on folks who are homeless? Does that really address the need, or how can we expand the hard-earned resources that somebody has by having them serve a meal here and or contribute to meal service here at Our Calling, right? What they would spend on a meal there, you may be able to prepare 20 meals here. But most folks don't understand that. So education is so important.
It baffles my mind that people will show up in front of our facility and serve meals out of the trunk of their car while we're serving meals here in a commercial kitchen that gets inspected and has all the equipment.
I know it.
Yesterday, our chef prepared chicken shawarma.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
He prepares the most amazing.
Yes.
We do brisket, we do salmon, we do ribs.
Right.
I mean, he does amazing food. Today it was some other kind of Mediterranean. I don't know why he's in this Mediterranean mode right now, but it's awesome. He's culinary trained.
Yes.
And our food is unlimited.
Yeah.
Unlimited. You want to go back through the line 7 times?
Come on.
That's totally fine.
Okay.
We don't use any styrofoam here on campus. It's not good for the environment. So you can't take food with you. It's not like you're packing up to take to your camp.
Okay.
But if you want to eat again and again and again because you haven't eaten in a few days, no problem.
Right.
But still, people will show up in front of our doors and serve food and leave styrofoam everywhere and make a mess.
Right. That's right.
And I know this doesn't ever happen at the bridge. Nobody serves meals right in front of the bridge, right when you're serving meals. And your staff are just shaking their heads.
Exactly.
Going, why?
Exactly. Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. The folks are out there. Saturday mornings, that early afternoon. The same thing on Sunday, right? And of course, we have valued being part of the neighborhood, right? Farmers Market, Cedars, okay? And when a street feeding group will come out, get their blessing. And the neighborhood is trashed out. They're not calling them. They're calling me. Dr. Woody, what are you doing? Messing with the neighborhood, right? Exactly.
It's kind of like all the trash that people always post about at homeless encampments.
Yes.
Right? And I used to be the guy, right? We would buy tents by like the hundreds or thousands and pass them out everywhere.
Yes.
Food on the streets everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is before the bridge was built even.
Right.
And so I get it. The heart and the compassion.
Exactly.
You feel like you're doing the right thing. You've got great motivation, great intentions. However, when you look at all the garbage in a homeless encampment, those people experiencing homelessness did not bring that garbage.
That's right.
They didn't bring that old couch or that old basketball goal or all those tents that get replaced.
That's right.
And some of those camps get 10 or 20 different groups that show up on a Saturday to serve meals. Like if they don't do it, they're going to starve. And then there's just knee-high garbage in some of these places.
Exactly.
And yet, the better option is to bring our resources together.
That's
in
right.
my opinion, we should not be helping people camp. We should help them on an exit strategy to get off the streets.
That's the message I want to communicate. And I'm not sure with Bullhorn, whatever, do I need to go to groups and just talk about again, it's a complex issue. We get it. But there are so many options that would allow a citizen to have their hard-earned dollars to grow them, to let them expand. Let us share with you how it is that what you spend to serve boxes of chicken from your trunk, how we can triple, the impact of that. And you could come onto campus and really engage a homeless citizen and really understand the diversity of how it is that folks became homeless too.
One of the things that's very different about the Bridge and Our Calling is we're a faith-based group. We talk about Jesus every day. We think he's super important. We focus on 2 questions. Will you trust the Lord? Will you let us help you off the streets? But we have such a great partnership and collaboration with other agencies that don't. There's a lot of believers that work at the Bridge and other places in town. Doesn't make us better, just makes us a little different. Now, we're completely inclusive in who we serve. We have everybody of every belief that comes in here that we serve all over the streets. But it's a great opportunity for us to focus on what we think is important, getting off the street. And being reconnected to God himself. Right? As you work with faith-based groups, and there's a lot of faith-based groups. I know John Castle was a dear friend of both of ours. He led Bible studies at the Bridge.
He did.
We used to lead a Bible study at the Bridge every Friday night from the time it opened until just a few years ago when we moved over here. What's the relationship between faith-based organizations and the Bridge?
It's still extremely important. As you described, we still have church groups coming on the campus probably 2 to 3 times a week, especially on weekends. My idea is this, that if you look at the person and you divide up a slice of pie, and yes, we need to take care of their physical health needs, behavioral health needs. We need to be talking about employment. We need to be talking about what's the housing solution that they're looking for. Spirituality, those spiritual needs, that's just as important a slice of the pie. And so to be able to have folks come onto the campus to make that resource available to folks, that's all part of them recovering, frankly, from homelessness and preparing them to use that part of who they are, and that's nurtured. That's going to be incredibly important to them in terms of sustaining their housing solution as well. So if we can make that happen and nurture that, that's just as important as everything else we're doing. And so we need to reconnect on, you're all coming to the campus on Friday nights. How about that? Okay.
Well,
Okay.
do this for me before
Yeah.
we close out here. And I know you get asked to do this at fundraiser events and, but tell us a few stories if you could.
Okay.
We don't have much time left, but let's
Right.
talk about a few stories, because we're not here just to pass out food and get people in housing.
Right.
We're here for the individual.
Exactly. Couple of stories. One of the most poignant ones for me is a female, older female, probably this woman was 65, 70 years old, and had significant, mental health issues, to the extent that she would sleep across the street, kitty corner from our campus, and folks could not get close to her. We tried to bring to bear the Heart team, 2 or 3 other teams. Folks would come engage, but not really bite down and really try to help this person. And so we would try to get her to come in. We may be able to get her to come in for a shower, a meal, that kind of thing, but she would go back there. We were finally able to get her in and to get her connected to MetroCare. And this is the work of one care manager who just went way over the board. And once she got stabilized on her meds, she made this incredible transition. And folks across the campus were speaking about how she cared for herself and her hair. And there was such a celebration when she moved into her own housing solution. We have her, she's a poster child for the Bridge, et cetera, et cetera. But it's those kinds of stories that are incredible. And then earlier this week, I came in at 6:30, 6:45, and was approached by a former guest who had been a former guest, who had a housing voucher and moved to San Antonio with that voucher. And Dr. Woody, do you remember me? Of course I remember you. And, with trepidation, why are you back? I had to ask a question,
yeah.
And so he went through this litany of challenges that he's had. Still has access to the voucher, and he came back to work with his former care manager to see if he could find something in Dallas. But what was more important is that he described a conversation I had with him 5 years ago.
Wow.
On the campus, and I was talking to him, and I was saying, finally, you know what? I don't know if you're really hearing what I'm saying, because you're pretty drunk right now. That kind of thing. And he was able to remind me of how much that hurt his feelings. But now that he's returned, how important it was that I would accept him and treat him as a human being, despite that status, So we always want for folks to be able to retain and maintain, sustain their housing solution. But when it breaks down, that they would feel good enough to come back to the Bridge and try again. It's pretty awesome as well. So, yeah.
Thanks for coming today. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you for having me,
Keep
Wayne.
up the
It's
good
great.
work.
And we'll continue to work together.
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward to it. Okay.
Thank you.